What's up everybody, Matt Moran here for another car review. This is of course the 2021 Nissan Armada. Huge thanks to Nissan for providing me here with the Armada to review for you guys today. So about the Armada, for 2021 here, it has been given a heavy refresh. It is not all new or anything, but it's the first to come out with this very bold truck look for Nissan, and it's also the first Nissan to debut their new logo on a production vehicle. And so that's very exciting to see, and I really love that new Nissan logo. I think it nicely exemplifies, how they're really turning around the entire brand, and every new Nissan I've been reviewing has been very impressive. So as for the Armada here, again, just a heavy refresh on this, but you can see they completely changed the front end. You have completely new headlights, a completely new front end as far as the front bumper, the grille, everything has been redone, and it gives it a much more aggressive and very sharp look over the old Armada, which in my opinion wasn't super cool looking. This does look really cool, and you can actually get a midnight edition of the Armada to completely get rid of all the chrome and really darken up the appearance and make it even more aggressive if you want. The hood and everything is also completely resculpted. The front fenders here are also redone and have this large vent here in them, and so that's an interesting little touch. You have a very large V8 badge as well, so everyone knows you have a V8 beast here of an engine, and so that's cool. You also, coming down to the sides here, have these 22-inch wheels on the Platinum trim. Now if you go for the SL or the SV, those wheels go down to 20 inches or 18 inches, but these 22s are really cool looking, and you still have a decent sidewall on these as well, so you have pretty good ride quality even with these massive wheels. But I think they look really nice here, and again show off that new Nissan logo. Otherwise though, the sides of this vehicle are identical to the pre-refresh Armada, so there's no changes, from the front fenders beyond. And then in the back, they did do some changes there in the back. So you'll see there's some new taillights, and you have a new little bar that kind of connects the taillights there with the Armada logo, and a little bit of a resculpted rear bumper there. But aside from those things, there's not really any huge changes on the back end either. But I think they nicely sharpened it up, made it look, a lot more distinctive than before. And I think it's a really good look overall, especially that front end. I think they knocked out of the park with the look on that front end. All right, so start up and go for a drive. The new Armada here has the same old Nissan key, but it does have the new logo at the top of it. And so there it goes. So yeah, you can see it's the same key, but I mean, this key is tiny. It's nice and thin. And so yes, it's not as cool looking or feeling as maybe some of the newest keys out there, but it's small. And I hate how huge some of the other keys these days have become. So I really like this key. Actually, I don't mind that they're keeping the old key design, and it is nice they gave it the new logo. But of course, it's keyless access, keyless entry, and push button start here on the Armadas. So you just leave the key in your pocket, hit the engine start button, and it starts right up. And if you're curious to hear about the interior here in the refreshed Armada, my wife and I actually just did a full in-depth interior review on this interior, so I'll link that above. You can go watch that if you want to hear all our thoughts on how they redid the interior in the Armada here. Overall, it's pretty nice. There's a lot that stayed the same from the previous Armada, but they have a nice new screen here, and so overall, it's a pretty nice feeling interior. All right, so setting off here in the 2021 Armada. So first thing you notice here about the Armada, well, I think the first thing that I notice is you're sitting up very high here in the Armada. I mean, your seat does go up and down, and I actually put my seat down a little bit, but it still just feels really high, and I've been struggling to get a comfortable seating position here. I've only had this vehicle for over a weekend, so haven't had a ton of time with it, but it's kind of strange because the steering wheel doesn't telescope out as far as I'd like it to for my legs to be in the right position, so I have to get a little bit closer to the whole front end of the vehicle here, and so it gives me a little bit of an odd setup. I just don't love the way I'm sitting here in the Armada. But, I think it's something you could probably get used to. Just, you have a very long seat bottom here, which might be great for comfort, but it does mean that, you just feel like, I just don't feel totally comfortable here in this seating position. But anyway, other things, visibility is pretty good. So you have, nice large windows and everything, although the A-pillar is pretty thick as well. And also the side mirrors are a little narrow. They're tall, but not as wide as I would personally like. So those are the only two little complaints there, but I mean, a great view forward, and view out of the back is great, especially now that here on the Platinums here you have this digital rear view mirror, and so that's great, and they've actually improved the camera on it, so it's clearer than before, and I gotta say it is definitely one of the clearest rear view mirror cameras that I've seen. It's just really crisp, although it is susceptible, like all the others, to getting dirty, and even if they have a little washer on them or whatever, it's still just, can sometimes, if it has a little bit of raindrops on it or something, it'll reflect the headlights weird and stuff, so it's not perfect. but I think it's a much improved camera rearview mirror, and you can of course flip it down and have a normal mirror if you'd like. And there's also the 360 cameras you can now have here on the Armadas to give you a great view all around, so if you're parallel parking or in tight spaces, that's very helpful as well. But anyway, so just pulling out onto a little back road here. One thing that I'm noticing is that the steering is really numb in the Armada. So it's very overly assisted, and you especially notice that whenever you're getting into the turns a little bit more. Like on center, it's okay, but then as you turn more, it like gets more and more disconnected the more that you steer it. And so, you know, I mean, it's okay. It gives you nice light steering, so I appreciate that. You know, in a vehicle like this, you don't need any kind of heavy steering. Throttle response, though, is immediate and very sharp, very impressive with that. I mean, I love how responsive it is and how natural it feels with the naturally aspirated V8 and everything. Brakes also have a pretty good feel to them. You know, it's not as weirdly boosted as the Toyota brake pedals and their large V8 powered trucks and stuff. They have a very odd brake sensation. This is very normal and feels pretty good. But there is no sport mode here, but let's turn down onto this back road and see how the Armada accelerates. Got it in the auto mode for the four-wheel drive, and here we go. Very strong, very immediate too. It pulls really hard. It's a strong feeling thing, and it also sounds really good with this V8. It actually kind of reminds me of a Maserati V8, which I know is probably crazy to say, but it sounds really good actually. I love accelerating this thing just to hear that melodic V8. But anyway, so it's going to be a 5.6 liter naturally aspirated V8 engine here in the Armadas, and it does 400 horsepower and 413 pound-feet of torque on premium gas. That is 10 more horsepower than you got last year, but that again is only on premium. If you're on unleaded, you know, regular, then you're going to be getting the same 390 horsepower as before. So I mean, it's 10 horsepower and something that weighs over 6,000 pounds. You're not going to really feel that, I'm sure, but it's a nice little improvement nonetheless. And so yeah, I mean, it's not a slow vehicle though, even though it is, you know, massive and heavy. These actually do a 0 to 60 time of about 6.3 seconds, and so that was according to Motor Trend's testing back before the refresh. Very strong performance. It all runs through a 7-speed normal automatic transmission, and it's very responsive. I mean, again, there is no sport mode or anything, but I just dip into the gas there a little bit, and it's right there to give me downshifts and go nuts if, you know, it senses that's what I want to do. And so that's great. Yeah, this steering though, it's really funny just how light it is. It's interesting, but you know, it actually is a really nice driving thing though, you know, aside from those few little nitpicks. I mean, we're on a really, you know, rougher road now, and this road generates a lot of road noise usually, and it's a very quiet hum. So they did actually add an acoustic windshield here for 2021, so that will quiet things down a little bit, but I don't think they added any other sound deadening, but nice and quiet. It really feels very luxurious, and so I mean, that's kind of makes sense considering this generation of the Armada is actually based on the you know, Infiniti QX80, and so that certainly helps with the refinement and stuff. But anyway, we're counting up some corners here, and let's see how the Armada handles them. So 6,037 pounds here for a Platinum four-wheel drive Armada like this one. And so, you know, the light steering definitely doesn't give me any confidence because it's kind of hard to tell exactly what the front wheels are doing. And there's a little bit of lean and roll here, but you know, it's fairly well controlled. I think one thing that really helps is these 22-inch wheels on this one. Certainly, I think give you, you know, stiffer sidewalls and stuff than what you would get on a normal, you know, 18 or 20-inch wheel Armada. So the Platinum will probably be the best handling one of the bunch. Otherwise, though, I mean, it's decent. You know, I mean, for what you're expecting here, I think it handles pretty good. I think that maybe the Toyota Sequoia handles a tiny bit better, but I think this also handles itself with a little bit more poise than some of the more expensive stuff from Toyota and Lexus, like the LX 570 and the Toyota Land Cruiser, although those are much more off-road oriented in their setups, and so that's part of why they, you know, have a little bit of a softer handling setup than this does. This is definitely tuned for on-road handling, and again, is kind of sharing the same basis with that Infiniti. But it is also, this platform goes back to the Nissan Patrol from the 2010s here, and so that vehicle was very good off-road. Unfortunately, though, with the Armadas, they don't get any of that off-road hardware that you get in the Patrol, and that, if they did add that stuff, it could potentially be some type of like Land Cruiser competitor, but as it is right now, It's definitely more street oriented. I mean, it is a tiny bit better now. So the restyled front bumper does give you a slightly better approach angle than before. So that's really the only improvement there. But as far as off-road kit goes, you just have the four-wheel drive high and four-wheel drive low. So you do have the different four-wheel drive controls there. But there isn't actually any kind of hill descent control or anything like that even, which is something you get on even some pretty pedestrian SUVs these days. So it doesn't even have that. It does have a snow mode, but that's about it as far as the customization, and any kind of modes for off-roading or anything like that. So again, most people are probably not going to be taking these things off-road, but if you are interested in that, just keep in mind that this is going to have a lot less toys than what you get in some of the more advanced off-roaders, with V8s in this kind of segment. There's also a couple of times where this four-wheel drive system was a little bit slow to react. I mean, it's in an auto mode here, and you can manually put it into 4 high or 4 low if you want to lock it into that four-wheel drive mode. Otherwise, it will try and revert to rear-wheel drive, every once in a while. But there's a couple of times, one time in snow when I was backing out of my driveway, which still had snow on it, where it spun a little bit, and then just pulling out there just a second ago, it wanted to do a little bit of that wheel spin as well. So a little bit slower to react here with this four-wheel drive system as well, but not a huge deal there, because again, you can lock it into that four-wheel drive if you really need all 4 wheels, for a certain scenario that you're in. One thing the Armada does seem to do pretty well is towing. So I haven't personally tested the towing, but it's rated at 8,500 pounds, and now for 2021, the trailer brake controller is standard on all Armadas. So that's a really nice touch. So that's really the one main appeal of these V8 powered beasts, is that you have much better towing than some of the other stuff that's a little bit smaller that might have V6s. This is going to drive basically the same as any other Armada from this generation though, because they didn't change anything as far as the driving dynamics here. Even the suspension hasn't been retuned. Nothing has changed as far as all that stuff goes. So if you've ever driven this generation Armada from 2017 or so to now, it's going to drive identical to this again, aside from that 10 extra horsepower, which again I don't think you're going to really be able to feel. But I don't really have any complaints. For family hauler, massive truck, it handles plenty good, and I'm sure no one's going to have any complaints there. The only real thing from a daily driving standpoint that I didn't like handling wise is that this vehicle, although it has an independent front and independent rear suspension and everything, it actually got a little bit more upset over bumps than I was expecting. And there was one bump on the highway where it really lurched around as I hit the bump, and it was kind of unrefined and something I'm honestly not used to in modern vehicles, because it was kind of sloppy over those bumps. So that's really the only thing that I noticed that feels a little unsophisticated about the suspension. I do have a couple other complaints though about my driving experience here in the Armada. The first thing is the safety technology here in it. So of course the Platinum trim has all the safety features, including the adaptive cruise control. So it does have that, but it doesn't actually have any kind of lane keeping assist system like in some of the newer Nissans. And so it's kind of odd that they didn't roll that out on this, because even like Toyota and Lexus with their ancient models, even they've given those some type of lane keep assist system. Even if it doesn't work great, they at least have integrated it, and there is none of that integration here. But you do have, like I said, the regular adaptive cruise. But my problem isn't really with the adaptive cruise system. My problem is with the lane keep assist, or the lane departure warning system, I guess I should call it. And so that system is very overreactive, and there were times where I wouldn't even get on the line. I would just be close to the line, and it would immediately, like you probably heard, vibrate the steering wheel and kind of give you a little bit of a freak out there. And it just was a little more overreactive, and it could just be the way this one is tuned. I'm not sure, because that's something that I haven't had really too many issues with in other Nissans. But the Sentra, when I had that also was a little overreactive with its lane departure warning. It did the same thing where it just buzzed the steering wheel, and it's not very refined. It's not as smooth as like GM. They also vibrate the steering wheel whenever you're going over the lines and things like that to get your attention, and their system is very subtle, and I love the application there. In this though, it's not nearly as good. And now just cruising out on the highway here, it still is pretty quiet and refined. I'm pretty impressed. Again, it's really like infinity levels of refinement in here, even though this is badged as a Nissan. So I have the adaptive cruise system on right now. That's also working smoothly here. I haven't had any complaints with that, although again, I only have this vehicle for a weekend, so I didn't have as much time to test it as I would have liked to have in my usual week-long press loans. But yeah, I mean, it is a nice cruiser here on the highway, and I think the light steering, though, is kind of nice on the highway here, because even though it's kind of numb, it kind of isolates you as well. So on a long road trip, you might actually appreciate that numbness of the steering, because it just kind of means you can coast along, and it's pretty comfortable, and yeah, I have no complaints here with the highway driving in the Armada. Getting back to the glitches, though, with the safety tech, one other little thing that happened was that the light for the automatic emergency braking, I guess an error with that system, was flashing the speedometer briefly, and then that went away. There's also a few other electrical gremlins in this pre-production model, which I think is why it had a lot of these things. But I drive a lot of pre-production press vehicles, and most of them don't have hardly any glitches, if anything, and this had a ton. So it also gave me several times, it told me that the windshield washer fluid was low. Even one time while I was standing still and I hadn't used it in my entire weekend, all of a sudden it decided that was low. That kind of comes and goes. The seatbelt also, it takes like 30 seconds after I put my seatbelt in for it to realize I have my seatbelt on, and then that warning goes away. So that's also another thing. Again, I'm hoping all of these glitches are just because this is an early pre-production model, and that'll all get ironed out with the production version, because this infotainment screen is also super buggy. I mean, it's the brand new screen here for the Armada, but it's running the established Nissan infotainment tech that they're using in all their newest stuff here, but it has the wireless CarPlay and all that kind of stuff. The wireless CarPlay will not automatically connect most of the time. Even whenever I manually connect it, there was a few times where it was very glitchy and buggy and wouldn't connect. It wouldn't respond to my touches. It froze up. And actually, one time while I was filming this review today, the whole screen locked up and just crashed and then rebooted itself automatically while I was driving, and just has a bunch of stuff that sometimes the radio comes on, sometimes it doesn't. It's all over the place. So again, I truly hope that's just because this is pre-production, because this car is the buggiest car I've driven probably in ever. I mean, I can't remember a time when I had more electrical gremlins in a vehicle I was reviewing that was brand new. So that's not great, but again, I'm hoping that stuff's just because this one is a pre-production version. But just keep in mind, make sure you test that kind of stuff on a test drive. Make sure the radio works, all that kind of stuff, and that they got all those bugs ironed out whenever they do come to production with these. But then the last two things I mentioned here are the fuel economy and the pricing here in the Armada. So first, we'll talk about the fuel economy. So, fuel economy in the Armadas is not great, as you might have expected, and that is something that hasn't changed from the older Armada, really. But, so these are rated at 13 mpg in the city, 18 on the highway, and 15 combined. So in my 65 miles of driving, not a ton of driving or anything, but actually 65 miles is enough on the gas gauge here to kill a quarter tank of gas. Even though this is like a 26-gallon tank or something, but this thing's been guzzling gas. I mean, I've been averaging 12.2 mpg, and so that included some idling to film this interior and stuff, so I'd be probably close to like 12.5. So honestly, I'm not that far from the city rating. Most of the times with any other vehicle I do, these reviews on, around this same area, this same type of driving, I'll be getting usually 2 mpg less than the city rating. So to be getting almost the city rating isn't too bad. So I'm guessing, I'd be closer to the 13 if I didn't do that idling, and so that's what these are rated at. So it's very upfront with that MPG rating. Just keep in mind that's what you're going to be getting. You're going to be getting low teens, and I mean, that's pretty par for the course, since most of the competitors all run V8s, and so you don't really have any good fuel efficient options in this segment unless you're willing to go diesel. And in that case, the new Chevy Tahoe you can get with a diesel option now, and that will actually give you fuel economy in the 20s for both even the city rating and also the highways, the high 20s. And so that's going to be the way to go, I think, if you want something this large that can still tow and stuff, but you want decent fuel economy. Otherwise, you're going to have to settle for low teens here most of the time in all these big V8 behemoths. But then the last thing to mention here is the pricing and the competition here. So I can't get into specifics on pricing because they don't have pricing available as of the time of me filming this. Again, they actually just revealed this vehicle just a couple of weeks ago, and I'm already driving it here, so pretty early on. So I don't have exact pricing, but I don't expect it to wander too far from the previous model year pricing for the Armada. So they started right under $49,000 for the 2020 models, and then platinum trim like this one loaded up was around $70,000. you know, it might bump it up $1,000 or something like that here for the new versions, but that's kind of where you're going to be landing most likely, is somewhere in that range. And so vehicles in that price range, you know, the main competition, at least that I see, is the Chevy Tahoe, Ford Expedition, and then like the Toyota Sequoia. And the Sequoia, I actually just reviewed one of those just a few months ago. Definitely not as refined, it's not as luxurious feeling at all. Everything feels cheaper, the interior feels much older and more dated, since Toyota has not given the Sequoia much of an update, and Nissan has here with the Armada. So I think this interior is much nicer than the Sequoia. Sequoia is a tiny bit cheaper though, but for a fully loaded Sequoia, I mean, you're going to get a much nicer interior here for fairly similar money with the you know, Armada. So I think it kind of wins out over that, although the Sequoia is maybe going to be a little bit more reliable. You know, Toyota V8s, and you know, I mean, that V8 in the Sequoia has been shown to go 1,000,000 miles in the tundra and stuff. And so, you know, I don't know how, you know, this one holds up compared to that, but I mean, I feel like these, you know, Nissan V8s are also pretty good. But then the other biggest competition to me is the Expedition and the Tahoe. Now, the Expedition you only can get with a twin-turbo V6, so for some people that immediately disqualifies it. So I'm not going to really dwell on the Expedition too much, because I have only done a quick drive video on that anyway. Haven't spent a ton of time with it. But the one that I did spend a lot of time with recently was the brand new Chevy Tahoe for 2021, and that is a very nice redo. It's very luxurious in its interior, even in a Tahoe, especially in those higher trims. It's very similarly priced, you know, starts right around the same pricing, goes up to a little bit beyond this. You can get a high country version of the Tahoe. Those end up landing you in the mid-70s, so maybe a few thousand more than this. But Tahoe, I think, is still the one to beat in this segment, since they completely, you know, redid the Tahoe from the ground up. It has the newest generation platform out of all the competition, the newest interior, you know, it's a complete redo. The screen's bigger, there's no bugginess. All those types of things are really, I think, what makes the Tahoe the best. It has that new wheelbase, which allows it to have much more third row legroom than you get here in the Armada, much more comfortable third row than the Armada here. Basically, just from every angle, I think the Tahoe does everything better than the Armada does, and I think the Tahoe is the absolute #1 in this segment of vehicle currently. And so if you're looking for something like this, I would strongly recommend looking at the Tahoe. And I know the looks aren't for everybody in that new Tahoe, but you can also get the GMC Yukon, which is also, you know, much more attractive styling in my opinion, and that's only like $1,000 or $2,000 more, you know, for a comparably equipped Yukon versus the Tahoe. So that's also an option, and that would be my pick in this segment, I think. But I really have to commend Nissan. They did greatly improve this, even though it is just a refresh. So I'm not quite as impressed as I have been with all their brand new next generation products, but I think this is a very good step in the right direction, and I commend them for updating the radio, which is something that, you know, Toyota loves sticking with their small little screens and, you know, their dated interiors, and I think they suffer because of it. And I'm glad that Nissan invested the money to put a new screen in here, to completely redo this center stack, to modernize it, give it a nice plush interior, great new looks on the outside, and I think they did a really good job here. I think this makes this a contender again, especially now with this new screen and stuff. This is a strong competitor, even though I think the Tahoe does everything better. If you're opposed to the American stuff for some reason, you know, and you want something that's Japanese, but you don't want the Sequoia because it does feel pretty old and dated, this could really be a great choice for you. So definitely check them out and, you know, take it for a test drive yourself, see what you think. But overall, it's a very strong competitor, and yeah, I think they did a great job with this redo. But anyway, let me know your thoughts on the refreshed Armada here in the comments below. Huge thanks to Nissan for providing me here with the Armada to review for you guys today. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching. Take care.